Welcome to the Art of Slowing Down to Quantum Leap podcast that I created especially for conscious introvert entrepreneurs. And if you desire to grow and quantum scale without the hustle and are ready to discover the missing pieces to effortlessly running a solo-line business, then this is for you. And I'm your host, Annalena Fuchs, a human design and energetic alignment coach. And my mission with this podcast is to provide you with a shortcut to your most aligned path to success and financial freedom using a powerful combination of human design, science, and spirituality. And I myself have shifted from working 9 to 5 to now enjoying the freedom of creating things on my own terms. And I want to help you do the same. Welcome everybody to episode 100 of the Art of Slowing Down podcast. It's Annalena here, your host. And of course, this is going to be a solo episode just to celebrate. And I honestly cannot believe it that this is episode number 100. And literally the whole purpose of this episode is just to celebrate and share with you a little bit of my own reflections of what this podcast has really given to myself and what I have learned on this journey of putting this podcast out into the world and staying consistent with it. First of all, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening, for being here with me, for following me along on my sometimes little crazy manifesting generator journey, right? Because so often, I like to change things. I change my mind and then I change my mind again. And that's okay. So, and I know also that many of you are manifesting generators yourself. So I also know that inspires you a lot. And I think actually that the episodes that were specifically for manifesting generators, they tend to have had the most downloads. So, but also if you're any other type, I love you as much. And I love that you're, again, also here with me on this journey. And so one of the things is in my Gene Keys profile, I have the 3 line in my pearl. So this is the conscious Jupiter, is in my gate 44 or Gene Key 44 and the line 3. So line 3 is all about how do we experience prosperity? And for me, the 3 line is actually all about celebration. And when I first learned this, I was like, ooh, I'm not doing this really much, right? There was kind of a hesitance, so to say. And honestly, one of the things that I have stepped into more and more to just give myself permission just to have fun, just to celebrate. And especially with things in my business, I have to say that I tend to be a little bit hard on myself sometimes. And when I accomplish things, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, I did it. And okay, what's next? Now I need to pursue and accomplish the next thing, right? So actually pausing, taking a moment and to look back and giving myself a little pat on the shoulder, that is something I'm still working on. And so here I am, just to literally celebrate and give myself a little bit of recognition that I have stuck with this, right? I have followed through. And here I am talking to you all by myself. And I'm celebrating 100 podcast episodes. And I think I started on January 11, 2022. That's when I put the first podcast episode out. So it's a little bit over a year and a half. And initially, actually, maybe that's a little bit one of my success secrets. When I put the podcast out, I only committed to bi-weekly episodes. I think I remember that because I wanted to make sure that I'm not overwhelming myself, that I'm not putting too much pressure on myself to have to release episodes on a weekly basis. And the funny thing is that I always put an episode out at least once a week. I think there was actually several weeks where I put out 2 episodes, but it actually never happened that I put out only a bi-weekly episode. And so the learning lesson here is maybe for you also that's inspiring, that don't push yourself too much because you think you have to really tune into your body take a moment, pause, slow down, and ask yourself, okay, what feels good and aligned for me, no matter what anybody else is saying? Because there may be people saying out there, well, to have a successful podcast, you have to release an episode once a week, or you should release at least 3 mini episodes once a week, or whatever, right? But for me, what felt right in terms of commitment, and I have a defined world center, right? So when I tend to commit to something, it's also kind of important for me to follow through with that. So I have really learned over the years to not to overcommit and not to overpromise. Also with my clients, I have this beautiful Conscious Money Collective membership, and one of the reasons that I actually waited quite some time to put it out to promote it was I had to get very clear on what I can firmly commit. And I tend to under promise and over deliver. That's kind of my strategy. And I do this unconsciously. It just feels right to me. And I also know that when I experience it with other people, right, when they promise all the things, which honestly also for me often just feels overwhelming. For me, always less is more. But then it's not being followed through that really throws me off. And I think that's kind of a standard I have for myself and for my clients. And of course, I'm not perfect. There may be times where I promise something and then I realize, oh, I can't. And then I have to own that and at least, share my truth about it. And if maybe I did change my mind. So anyways, going back more to the podcast. So that was just one of the things that I trusted myself, that I made that commitment to myself. And then with ease, honestly, it just happened that I put episodes out once a week or even more, like I said. And I think that was one of the really important things for me. And then the other thing was also that this podcast has also given me again, or has shown me the power and the magic of consistency, which, truth to be told, for me as a manifesting generator, is not the easiest thing, and I don't have gate 5 in my chart. I don't have the arrow that on the top left of my chart, it's not pointing to the left, it's pointing to the right. So I'm more like, I'm all about flow and literally like very feminine energies, a lot in my chart. So I tend to struggle with this more masculine, and I also need that in my life, of course, right? But I think I have found through my flow ways where I kind of allow the consistency to come in my life. So this was with a podcast. I trusted following my strategy and my authority. I took some time and then it finally felt right. I informed everybody. I finally did it. Then I made sure I didn't overpromise. I didn't put too much pressure on myself with my undefined rule, which just does not go well at all. Because I think that's actually something that can happen with the undefined rule a lot, where we feel all the pressure. I need to give them everything. I need to overpromise the world. And then we just can't, right? So, and then there were many times where I was on this plateau, right? As a generator type, we have plateaus, which basically means there are times where, things are flying. I had all these people reach out to me. I recorded a bunch of podcast episodes in advance. I think there was a time I had 2 or even 3 months of recorded podcast episodes already created. So I had no pressure at all. I was like, yeah, I have content for the next 2 or 3 months, easy. But then there were other times where I felt kind of uninspired and I didn't even have the drive to reach out to people or didn't even want to have anybody on my podcast. So I was in this plateau, but every time that happened and I just allowed myself to slow down and just be with the feelings and sensations of feeling a little bit like, stuck and blah, I just let that be. And then magically, when the time came when I had to, create more content, I either felt inspired to record episodes on my own, or I had a lot of people all of a sudden, like, in really new kind of cool and fresh energy, people reach out to me that wanted to be my podcast. And then my cycle was like, oh, yeah, that felt really good. So it is normal. I want to point this out that when you commit to something long term, that you have these plateaus. And that's one of the things I know I've spoken about this a lot before, especially for manifesting generators, but honestly, this applies also, I think, to all human design types. It is normal that we have times where we're not feeling 100% excited and over the moon. to be doing something, right? Because for the generator types, we always say like only do what lights you up. But there is still a natural evolution of day and night kind of energy where the sun is on and then the night comes and we're slowing down and we feel more calm and then we feel more excited, right? So there's a shift of energy and we can stay with that. Now there can be a time where you're on the plateau and it just never seems to end and this spark doesn't come back, and through following your strategy and your authority, no other people reach out to you and your whole body is like, okay, no more. And that could also happen with this podcast. I really don't know, right? And then it could be the time that, okay, I had this podcast for X amount of years and now it's time for me to finish this. This can also happen, right? For example, right now I'm in a process, by the way, I'm planning to keep up with this podcast. I really love it. But one of the things that has come to me over and over again through responding is a YouTube channel, for example. And I'm still not fully ready. I actually have a YouTube channel. I'm going to put it in the show notes. So give me some love and subscribes and likes. That will really help. No, but I actually started, I think it was almost 3 years ago or 2.5. I'm not exactly sure, that I started a YouTube channel called Annalena's Wonderland. And I did some episodes kind of like here on this podcast where I interviewed people and I had a lot of fun. But then I really lost my momentum. And I don't know, I stopped it. And then over the time that I have been having this podcast, I have released, I want to say, a handful of episodes that are also here on this podcast. I also released them on my YouTube channel as well with the actual videos. And I have actually had several of my listeners, some of my clients even, they have asked me, hey, Annalena, can you please put your podcast also on YouTube? Because I don't even have the podcast app on my phone. I just use YouTube a lot. And then also I have had lots of other people in my world recently, literally left and right, in front of me, behind me, everywhere, that have been talking about YouTube channels. And my sacral is like, oh, yeah. So I think this is something that is going to be birthed pretty soon. I still don't have the exact details. I'm going with my flow as usual. But most likely what I envision right now is that I will release the podcast episodes also on my YouTube channel, but then in addition, share some other trainings about human design where you can also visually see me, look at a chart, do some celebrity chart readings and stuff like that, because I just love that kind of stuff. It's so much fun. And I know that it's helping people tremendously, right? And I have to say, I'm actually a very visual person myself. And yeah, it's kind of interesting that I haven't done this more, but there's a time for everything, right? And it was okay for me to just be with my podcast for all this time. And one of the things I can really say right now that I'm saying this, I had this aha moment. I almost feel like that I had to dive into the podcast in particular also to come back onto video more confidently on my YouTube channel, because one of the things that has honestly been the biggest gift of this podcast for myself is that I was very nervous in the beginning. I felt so uncomfortable, you guys. And if I would listen now to an episode like my first episode, I would probably oh my gosh, really? And still sometimes when I listen to myself, I want to oh my God, I need to edit this. I say and write. There's some words I just say a lot. And I could edit everything and get into perfectionism and never get it out. But I have come to the point where I literally just put the podcast episodes out the way they are. And I think I have been improving over time, to speak more clearly, to take some more pauses, not use all these filler words, but I probably still do that a lot. And again, that's just who I am. It's a natural evolution, right? So I say that a lot. I have noticed when I listen to myself, and that's okay. And it has really given me this space of creativity where through speaking with other people, and also just now where I just talk on my own. I have a couple of notes here right in front of me that I scribbled down 5 minutes before I got on this call, but I was like, no, I'm just gonna do whatever comes through for me. I think that's always the most powerful. But with my undefined head in Ajna, sometimes I can just totally be blank as well, right? So even right now, I'm like, what if I have nothing to say? So this can really happen, and this can hold us back from showing up on a podcast. And so over time, this has really given me a place to speak my truth more boldly, to be more vulnerable. And I think I'm actually amazed myself of all the things that I have been sharing on this podcast. And I have also received a lot of beautiful feedback from you guys, from your listeners that have actually told me like, wow, you're so like raw and honest and like real. And I had to actually hear this from you guys because it's not until, especially as a two line, I don't see my magic so often. It's like, oh yeah, whatever, it's just normal. But hearing it from you, it means the world to me, seriously. So if you want to share that with me, it lights me up, seriously. If you want to send me an email, if you want to send me a message on Instagram, or also the other thing actually I wanted to talk about is reviews, right? So podcasts heavily rely on reviews. So the more reviews we have, the more the podcast gets out into the world, right? I guess there's also some kind of an algorithm. And I was always in the state of like, okay, let me offer something for free so people have an incentive to write me a review. And even when I was thinking about this episode, it's going to be episode 100, I was thinking I need to do a giveaway and let me create an incentive for people so they can give me a review. And then you know what I realized? Like right before I got on the episode here, I was like, this is not how I want to do it, because this is this old way of thinking. I'm going to do this to get something, right? I have to give something away so people give me something back. Because that's not how I run my business. That's not how I run my relationships. I don't do things to make money. For example, I didn't start this podcast with the purpose of, okay, how can I make more money? Let me create a podcast. No, I did it because I love to talk. And my voice, I think, is one of my most powerful assets. And also, actually, I recently realized that I had an astrology reading, and I have apparently like a triple grand trine or something in my chart, and everything is in air energy, like this. So I have a grand trine times twice or something, and everything is in air signs. And the astrologer was saying like, this is like super duper rare. Just to have a grand trine is really rare, but you have like double, triple. It's like she probably has never seen it before or something. And she said that, and she didn't know me. That was the fun thing. She was like, well, have you ever thought about having a podcast? And I was like, yes, I have a podcast. She said, wow, that's amazing, because most often when we have these gifts, we actually never get them out into the world, right? And of course, then it will manifest with stuck emotions or disease in the body and stuff like that. So I was so happy and proud about myself that I have stepped into this. And there are other things that I think this is also why YouTube channel is really aligned for me. I totally want to write books. Still has not had the final nudge. I was co-authored in one of the books, just one chapter in there many years ago, but I haven't written my own book yet. And this is definitely something on my list. So watch out. I don't know when it's going to come, but when it will, I will definitely inform all of you. But now going back to the review. So I invite all of you, right? If this podcast is making a difference in your life, if you love it, whatever, if you feel that and you would like to give a review, I would be delighted. Seriously, it's gonna bring me so much joy, and I think it will also benefit many other people, right? And I just want you to do it because you want to give that unconditionally, and I think that's a really important thing in business as well. I have been learning this more and more, when there's always this like, let me give something to get something back. And I just want to be open to receive. If you feel aligned with that, again, I would be super happy to receive some reviews from you. And either if that's on YouTube or on Spotify, any of those platforms, it's more than welcome. And I think that is the most important that I wanted to share about this podcast. And if you have been on the fence, about maybe launching your own podcast, I just ask you, like, what's holding you back? And I think so often it's because we are just scared to speak our truth. And I can just tell you again, like I said earlier already, that a podcast is it's like a playground where you can try things out. So again, especially as a manifesting generator, And I'm very happy actually that I chose a name for my podcast, like The Art of Slowing Down, that has given me the space to do a lot of different things, like a huge variety of things. And of course, I love talking about all things human design and gene keys, as you know. But, over time, things may evolve, and there may be some other things I want to more deeply talk about as well, in conjunction with human design and gene keys or not. And there's this overarching theme of always slowing down, doing less. And I have experienced so much more magic in my own life. The more I pause, the more I slow down, and then I actually go faster. And I think the world really needs to slow down big time. And I'm just really excited for this podcast to evolve, to get bigger, bolder, better, even more out into the world and impact many, many more people in the world, because we are so rushing around all the time. We are trying to chase everything. We're looking for everything on the external. We're so codependent with everything, right? In relationships, with money, anything in life. We always think that everything is outside of us. And what slowing down has really made me realize is that everything I'm looking for is right here. It's in my heart. It's in my body. And my body is constantly guiding me. And I'm so grateful that human design and the gene keys came into my life, because that's really the message of both of these systems, right? That the mind is not here to figure things out. The mind is not here to make decisions. It happens in the body, right? And then we are more compassionate with how we're feeling, and that we have the courage to take those steps that are unreasonable, to take those steps that don't make any kind of sense to the mind. And especially in the context of making money. And you guys know that I like to talk a lot about money. There's actually a bunch of episodes I did specifically about money. And maybe also for you to celebrate the 100th podcast episode, maybe just go back, maybe right now, ask your body, which is the podcast episode that is of highest service to you? Pick a number from 1 to 100 and go listen to that. And then let me know, what was that one message that you had to hear? And again, because we always need more and more, we think. But maybe it's something that I already said before, and you just need to listen it one more time, and then you finally get it. For me, it has been so many times that when I go back to what I already have, or I read a book again, or for example, these 64 archetypal energies in human design, right? I write the gates and the 64 gene keys. This is not something you're going to look at once, you guys. This is something you're going to look over and over and over at it. I cannot tell you how many times I have studied, contemplated these energies, and I'm still feel like I have just touched the surface. And you probably know on my Instagram, I have shared the gates, all 64 gates. I almost did that for entire 2 years. Just recently, I felt like, okay, it's enough. And now I have actually dove more into the channels, and also started to talk a little bit more about the incarnation crosses. So that's where I really feel pulled into, because I love to talk about these energies in a way that is really practical for people. Because often people are like, okay, what am I going to do with this right now, right? So that's kind of what has been happening for me. And this has only been through slowing down. If I would have rushed and like, okay, now I know the 64 gates, and now I know the 64 gene keys, I read it once, and now on to the next. This is like wisdom, ancient wisdom that has been here for thousands and thousands of years from the Chinese I Ching, these 64 hexagrams. And for me, this literally explains how the universe works. It is so freaking fascinating. So all these things that I thought about how life works before, what I thought about spirituality, when I studied those 64 archetypal energies, I understood that, oh, yeah, it's all there. It was kind of a confirmation for me that what I felt deep inside, I can trust that. And also for you to know that all these 64 gates, all these 64 gene keys, they apply to all of us humans, to all of us. Yes, the ones that you have defined in your chart, they are going to be more dominant for you in your life. And that's actually an energy you're going to put out into the world. And then the things that are undefined, or the gates that are undefined in your chart, you learn it more through other people, through your environment. So it's more like a receptive energy. But at the end of the day, just because you don't have a gate defined doesn't mean that energy doesn't apply to you at all. It may be quite the opposite, because you can actually amplify those energies. And most recently, just to share this with you guys, to give you a glimpse of what's ahead. So I have been contemplating the Gene Keys a lot. And in our mastermind, together with Miranda in the Depth Mastermind, we have been contemplating the Pearl sequence. And as you come to the end of the Pearl sequence, you come back to the brand, which is your life's work, your conscious sun, and your human design chart. It's so beautiful. Like Richard Rudd talks about it. It's kind of the joke. He calls it the joke about the Gene Keys and everything. And then you realize that, yeah, the 64 energies, they apply to all of us. And what's even the big deal, right? Because at the end of the day, we are all here to trust ourselves, to trust that inner wisdom. And my conscious sun is the 13th Gene Key, which in human design is all about listening. And it's about the gift is discernment. And it's the discernment between, what's actually right for you. And it always goes back to listening to yourself. It's listening to your heart, listening to your body. And the more I practice that, the more I listen to my heart, to my body, and I tune out the noises, which requires for me to slow down, the more magic unfolds in my life, the more inspired I am, the more easy and effortless things become. And also effortlessness is another thing that I want to just briefly touch upon to kind of finish up this episode. So I'm a 2-4 profile, right? And it's called this, I think Jenna Zoe calls it the easy breezy genius. I think it stems actually from her. I love that term, how she uses that, because it's true. Like, I'm supposed to do the thing that comes so easy to me, feels so effortless. This does not mean it's only supposed to be for the 2 lines so easy and effortless. We are actually here to show this to the world, to teach it to others as well. It's supposed to be more easy and effortless for all of us, right? The thing that you're here to put out into the world. So what is that thing that comes easy to you? But you're going to be like, yeah, well, okay, it comes so easy to me, but everybody knows how to do that. No, it doesn't mean that. It comes easy to you because you are meant to pour this gift out into the world. We have been learning over the years that it's supposed to be hard. We have been conditioned. We have started to believe that. And it's nobody's fault, right? This has been evolving over the years and generations and societies. And we're now on this shift in time where we're starting to wake up and realize, it gets to be easy. Because didn't they always say, whatever you believe? So I invite you to believe that life gets to be easy, life gets to be more joyful, and you get to have all that you desire because you believe that. So an effortlessness does not mean we're not going to put any kind of effort into anything. Just like my podcast here, right? Like, if I would say I wouldn't have put any kind of effort into this podcast, I would be not truthful, right? Of course I have put effort into this. I have put a lot of energy into it. And like I said, sometimes I felt kind of like, and I waited until the last minute to record the episode that had to come out on a Tuesday, but I did it anyways, and somehow it still flowed. But effortlessness means I'm putting less effort into it than I would do like when I push too much. So it's like, I'm not putting unnecessary effort into it. I'm just putting the effort into it that is naturally required. So it starts to flow. So I'm flowing with a stream of life, with a stream of nature. And effortlessness can still include that we work hard on it. But working hard even can be joyful and not necessarily feel like work, but more like joy and fun. So that's what I want to leave you with. Really spend some time on tuning into, what is that thing that just comes so easy to you and you don't even give yourself credit for it? Maybe that's the thing you're here to share more with the world and put it out there, because there's a reason why this comes so easy to you. Let's just think about that. So this was podcast episode 100 of the Art of Slowing Down podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with me. I'm always excited to have you, and I can share with you, I'm really excited for the upcoming episodes. I already recorded a bunch and there's much more goodness coming. So stay tuned for that. And I'm sending you all my love, all my blessings, and I'm very excited to be with you on the next episodes. Thank you for listening to this episode. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, then please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on iTunes. And if you also know someone that you know in your heart could benefit from listening to this podcast, then I invite you to please share and help me reach more conscious leaders so we together can create global impact. I truly appreciate you, and see you next time.